is equal to Darmasantika. I want to explain material how to analyze novel. Novel is literary works which format in narrative story. To analyze this novel, we shall find the element of novel. First, they are setting, characteristic, plot or structure, conflict, character or point of view, theme, still.
Alright, thanks for the time you give for me. Hi guys, my name is Ratna. So today I will presentation about how to analyze a short story and how to analyze a poetry. First is how to analyze a short story. Short story is short work, narrative prose that is usually centered around one single event. To analyze a short story, we should find the element of short story. They are: first is setting. Setting is a describe about when and where the story takes place. Next is characterization. Characterization is deal with how the character in the story are described. Next is plot and structure. The plot is the main sequence of the event that make up the story. In the short story, the plot is usually centered around one experience or significant event. Next is narrator and point of view. The narrator is the person who telling the story. By point of view, we mean from whose eyes the story is told. Short stories tend to be told through one character's point of view. Next is conflict. Conflict or tension is usually the heart of the short story, and also is related to the main character. In a short story, there is usually one of the struggle. Next is climax. The climax is the point of greatest tension or intensity in the short story. It can also be the point where events take a major turn as the story races towards its conclusion. Next is theme. The theme is the main idea, lesson, or message in a short story. It may be an abstract idea about the human condition, society, or life. Next is style. The author's style has to do with his or her vocabulary, use of imagery, tone, or the feeling of the story. It has to do with the author's attitude towards the subject. Next, your literary analysis a short story will often be in the form of an essay where you may be asked to give your opinions of the short story at the end. Choose the element that made the greatest impression on you and point of which character you like best or less and always support your arguments. Alright, next is the how to analyze a poetry. Poetry is a form of expression. The poet uses his or her own personal and private language, which leaves poetry open to different interpretation. Alright, next is how to analyze a poetry. Poetry is a form of expression to use his or her own personal and private language, which leaves poetry open to different interpretation. Although the poem might have had one specific idea or purpose in mind, the reader response might be completely different. To analyze a short story, alright, next is how to analyze a poetry. Poetry is a form of expression. The poem uses his or her own personal and private language, which leaves poetry open to different interpretation. Although the poem may had one specific idea or purpose in mind, so the reader response may be completely different. To analyze a poetry, you should following. Alright, next is how to analyze a poetry. Poetry is a form of expression that uses our personal and private language, which leaves poetry open to different interpretation. Poem always had one idea or purpose in mind, so the reader response will completely different. To the following guide and question will help you to analyze a poetry. First is read the poem in its entirety to get a general impression. Second is what is the poem about? Third is what is the lead title of the poem? Fourth is who is speaker or narrative voice of the poem? Next is to whom is the speaker speaking? Next, what is the purpose of the poem? And the last one is what is the tone of the poem? Alright, that's all from me. For the next material will be held by my friend to Kadek Dwi Darmaniti. This time for you. Bye bye.
Hi everyone, my name is Kadek Dwi Darmaniti and I'm going to continue the topic. This is a new topic, is about how to analyze film. Well, film are similar to novel and short story in the way they tell a story. And along with the literary elements such as plot, setting, characterization, structure and theme, which is make up the text or screenplay, there are many different films technique used to tell a story or narrative. First is film content. In film content, there are many elements. First is film fact, such as the title of the film and then year the film was produced and then nationality, names of the actors, name of director. The next one is genre. Genre such as romantic, historical, detective, adventure, horror, and etc. Next is setting. Setting is about the place, the geography, and then the time, the condition of the film. Next is plot and structure. In plot and structure, how is the plot structured? Is it linear or presented through flashback? Next. Alright, so the next one is conflict. Conflict is usually as the main of the film. I mean as the heart of the films, which is related to the main characters. And usually this conflict is something that the viewers waiting for. And then the next one is characterization. Characterization deals with how the characters are described. Is it protagonist or antagonist or etc. And then the next one is narrator and point of view. Next is imagery. Imagery is about symbols and then image or color and objects in the film. And then next is theme. Theme is about the universal idea, the main idea, universal idea. And then the next important element in the film is cinematic effect. In cinematic effects, there are many elements too. First is soundtrack. Soundtrack is a sound or like a song of the film. And then the next one is use of the camera. In here is about how we use the camera. Is it a close-up or is it like the angle like that? And then the next one is lighting. This is very important too, because lighting focuses the audience attention on the characters' objects. And then the next one is editing. Editing is the way the scenes are joined together and then creates the rhythm of the motion picture. There are the elements of the films, the important elements beside the literary structure, like that. Well, the last one is conclusion. When analyzing films for schoolwork or projects, try to think of the films as a whole and how the elements mentioned above work together to bring out the main message of the film. So the main message of the films is very important. If you got the main message of the film, so it means you are success to analyze the film. That's all. Thank you, everyone.